As most of you probably know, we've been focusing on spiritual mind treatment, both in August when we talked about the steps and the form, and now in September when we start talking about the feeling that is behind the action of affirmative prayer or affirmative meditation. And so my focus is divine ideas. And unlike Dr. Edward, I'm not going to leave you with a cliffhanger in 20 minutes because you'd be hanging on until next September when I return to this podium. So instead, we will have a brief overview of divine ideas, both what they are and how we might open up ourselves to more of them. To do that, I'm going to share a mantra that came to me several years ago and use it as the kind of the structure for this talk. And the mantra is love, trust, let go, be. I'll repeat it again at the end, but that has served me very well as I've followed a path of trying to be more and more available to Spirit and more of a yes in my life. But to start, I suppose we better try and figure out, talk a little bit about what divine ideas are. And here's what Ernest Holmes has to say, a little piece at a time. First, we do not look at the things which are seen as being eternal. What he means by that is all of this external world, what we see, taste, feel, touch, has a reality, but it's changing. It's constantly changing, and it is not eternal. So that's not what we choose to recognize as the underlying reality. Instead, behind the visible and the changeable is the changeless reality, the eternal one, working in time and space for the expression of itself. Now, there's a lot in that I could choose to focus on. And for me, the part that's the most encouraging is the last bit, where Holmes writes that the eternal one is working in time and space for the expression of itself. So what is spirit? God, love, creator, perfection, joy, goodness. So what that particular phrase is saying is spirit, the eternal one, the changeless one, wants to express that good, that beauty, that joy. And in fact, that's all that it's able to express, because it is those qualities of goodness and joy and love. So that's what's tucked in that little phrase. And then we get to the punchline. The divine ideas stand back of all human thought, seeking admittance through the doorway of the mind. So doorways can be open or closed. How's your mind these days? Does it have a lot of sense of what belongs inside? Or is it open to divine ideas? You have a choice, and I invite you to consider having your mind and your thoughts and your expectations be a yes of openness so that divine ideas can flow. So, let's get to the heart of this talk, which is to look at loving, trusting, letting go, and being. The first step in finding the feeling that empowers affirmative meditation or affirmative prayer is to have the faith in that underlying eternal changeless one. And for me, and I don't know how it is for you, I can learn about it, I can study it, I can think about it, but the place where I really connect to it is within my heart, my internal sanctuary and place of stillness. And I do that through the power of love. That's my way of connecting. And I suspect that for many of you that may also be the case. I'm going to use some of Ernest Holmes' words to describe this process of loving connection, because I think that sometimes our founder gets a little bit of a bad rap. It's very common to say, oh my gosh, that textbook, it's so long and wordy, and oh my goodness me, couldn't he just speak in plain old English? In fact, I'm noticing more and more, taken in small doses, it's not bad. And one of the tools that we have for getting into the textbook is the concordance. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but there's a book that someone put together that indexes the ideas and the words in the textbook. So for example, if you're looking at what Holmes has to say about patience, or about flow, or about trust, or love, you can look in the concordance and it will give you the page number and the paragraph number for where patience shows up in the textbook. And that way you can take little sips. You don't have to read 20 pages to find what you really need to be reading in the moment. So anyway, here's one of the amazing things that Holmes says. I invite you to close your eyes as I read this. He's talking about love. Infinite love harmonizes our entire being. The healing currents of life flow through us, taking away every negative thought and manifestation, and adjusting our whole physical being to the idea of divine harmony. Infinite love adjusts our being to divine harmony. Just breathe that in for a moment. And begin to get a sense of that infinite, spacious, loving presence that's underneath it all. Here's some more from Holmes. If we look at love long enough, we shall become lovely, for this is the way of love. God is love. If we gaze longingly at joy, it will make its home in us, and we shall enter its portals and be happy. If we seek the divine in humankind, we shall find it, and be entertaining angels unaware. That's Holmes. That's Holmes. Touching into the power and the grace of love. So this is the feeling place where our prayer, where our affirmative meditation begins. In this place of acceptance and generosity and openness. It does not start in the, oh my gosh, I've got all this stuff I need to do, and I've got this problem, and how am I? No, 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 no. You start by setting all of that aside and settling in to this foundational place of unconditional, infinite love that delights in its expression in, through, and as you, that delights in your magnificence. Take that in for a moment. Spirit delights in and loves you just the way you are. That's the feeling where our spiritual mind treatment begins, in that love. Then we move on to one that's a little bit trickier, at least for me, maybe not for you all. Trust. That's something that, as someone who likes to be in charge and manage things and figure things out, is not always quite so easy to get to. But there are some suggestions for how you might begin to develop a deeper trust. For example, notice what is working in your life. I'm absolutely positive that if I asked anyone in this room, you could come up with at least 3 things that are working in your life right now, no matter what. No matter what. Might be as simple as, I'm still breathing. Or it may be something much more complicated. But I'm certain that there are actually many more than 3 things. And you want to start noticing those as signs that Spirit is in fact supporting and evolving and developing your expression as you. Spirit is trustworthy. Spirit's got this. Spirit's got this. There's another example to share. Look for the little things. Sometimes I think we get caught up in expecting that when Spirit's really answering prayer, there's going to be fireworks and angels singing and flashing lights and words and neon signs. And then maybe some of us will have that experience. But there are many other sweet places. Some time ago, I was talking to a congregant out in the social hall. And he was talking about the challenges he was having in connecting with the divine. He was feeling kind of, like I'm not doing it well enough. I should be getting a better connection than I have. And he started describing what often happened in meditation. I'll get this sense of an ocean of infinite consciousness, and I'm one with that. Often, this congregant had that experience. But because it wasn't bells and whistles, he missed it. And yet I have a sense that as I said that, many of you were imagining the stillness and the gift of that experience and the divine connection that it was. So notice the little things. They're important too. Notice what happens when you cram a day full of busyness with one more thing. And notice what happens when you have an incredibly busy day and you take time out for prayer and meditation. I really struggled with this one at 5 o'clock this morning. I said, no, I'm going to skip meditation today. I have too much to do. And then I went, Tara, walk your talk. You're going to sit and meditate just like you do. And I did, and I actually got a few more ideas for this talk. So it's worth taking the time. In our world, human beings, generally we fall into one of 2 categories, doing or being. And we have a mix of both, but we tend to either be more of a being person or more of a doing person. And I thought it might be fun to provide a couple of examples, one of a doer and one of a beer, to just kind of make this a little bit clearer. And so I decided I'd share quotes from Elon Musk and then Mahatma Gandhi. So Elon Musk is the person who invented the electric vehicle, or the battery system that made the electric vehicle possible. He's developing rocket ships to go out into space and all kinds of other things. Is he a beer or a doer, fundamentally? Doer. So here's what Elon Musk says about how things happen in his life. Elon Musk, optimism, pessimism, that. We're going to make it happen. As God is my bloody witness, I'm hell-bent on making it work. Work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in 80 to 100-hour weeks every week. This improves the odds of success. So how do you feel? It's like your shoulders came up a little. You're kind of like, Okay? That's the doer. And we all have a bit of that. Next slide, please. Mahatma Gandhi on being. He changed the world. Okay? Here's what he says. In the attitude of silence, the soul finds the path in a clearer light, and what is elusive and deceptive resolves itself into crystal clearness. Our life is a long and arduous quest after truth. Now, I read it differently, but it has a whole different feel to it. He was the person who, when the Indian National Congress decided it was time to be independent of the British Empire, took up the challenge of bringing that independence into reality. And what he did when he realized that he had the opportunity was he didn't go marching off to make all kinds of to-do lists and gather people and just charge into it. He went home and he sat in meditation for weeks. And he then came up with an idea that everyone thought was crazy, the Salt March, where Indians from across that subcontinent marched to the ocean and gathered salt, which was freely available, but illegal to gather because the British controlled the salt. So an absolutely crazy idea became the entry point into Indian independence, and it came from sitting in stillness and listening to what Spirit had in mind. So they're two very different people, and again, I think we have both of those qualities in us. Let me close this section on trusting with what Ernest Holmes has to say about prayer. We should pray not with anxiety, but with expectancy, not by coercion, but with conviction, not through compulsion, but in a state of conscious recognition and receptivity. We do not have to drive or push, but we must accept and believe. We should then leave everything to the law, expecting a full and complete proof of our faith. So now that we've centered in a sense of love and support and spaciousness, and recognized that Spirit is trustworthy, here comes the big one. We let go. We let go. As Jesus says, the Father within is the one who does the work, or the Mother, Spirit, love, grace. But we're not the ones doing the work. We're the instrument. We don't have to make it happen. As Deborah Johnson says, don't think of yourself as a collection of activities. Think of yourself as a place of consciousness. Not a to-do list, a consciousness. There's an outline that goes with every Sunday morning talk that we can use or not use, and there was one for this talk on divine ideas. And one of the sections was, so how do we get to divine ideas? And there were the usual suspects. Spend time alone. Yes, sometimes. Do your spiritual practice. Yes. Be in a community that resonates with you. Absolutely. But I think the author of that outline missed a very important variation. We have doers, we have beers, and we have these guys. Children. I invite us, and in fact I'll invite you along with Sky this afternoon into a workshop of playfulness, of hanging out, of playing hooky. You know, I did that a couple months ago, played hooky. I didn't take a vacation, I played hooky. And to find out what that means, here's your cliffhanger. Come to the workshop this afternoon at 2. Because there's a delight in playing hooky that leads you into creativity and newness in a very important, very special way. So do something different. Tap into playfulness, creativeness. Remember that being spiritual does not have to be hard work. It can actually be fun. It can actually be joyful. There's a term in Sanskrit, lila. Lila means divine play or divine playfulness. That's another name for the manifest universe. It's God's play in a joyful, grateful, inspired way. That's us. Leela, playfulness. So we'll talk about that more this afternoon. And time is running away with me as usual. The last piece of my mantra is to be. When I first discovered this mantra, I said, love, trust, let go. And that was sort of like I was in this weird limbo of, okay, now I've let go, now what? And I realized I needed to come home to being. So it's love, trust, let go, be. And in closing, let's look for a moment at those words. To love, to be in that place of awareness of the divine, that fundamental underlying divine idea of good, of beauty, of love. To really sense that, feel that, dive into that, contemplate it. Don't just think about it. And then, as you move from love into trust, notice in this coming week where spirits actually got your back, where amazing things and little things are falling into place. Like, did you notice the match of the greens? Totally by accident. So pay attention to those little things so that you build that awareness that spirit is trustworthy. Then, when you know that spirit is trustworthy, let go and let spirit do its amazing, creative, infinite work in, through, and as you. Don't put spirit in this little box of, this is what I want you to do, this is what I need. Say, here's how I want to feel, here's what I want to be open to, here's what I want to say yes to. Have at it, spirit, and let me know what is mine to do as it comes up. That's a luscious, wondrous place to simply be. To simply be. So that those wondrous divine ideas that are the core of who you are can emerge. There's your work for the week. Love, trust, let go, be. So with that, let's move into prayer. If you're willing to close your eyes, as I recognize that incredible one, the one of love, grace, power, infinite creativity, infinite possibility, that is in, through, and as all of creation, and underlies all that is, no exceptions. As I know this one in its power, its grace, its presence, I celebrate that it expresses in, through, and as me, and in, through, and as each and every person in this room and beyond, each and every bit of creation. Knowing that, I know that we are in an ocean of love, that it is inescapable, that it is acting in and through and as us in each and every moment, that we trust in that one, that we let it do what it does so well, and are simply present in gratitude and awe and joy. Knowing this is the truth, always is, always was, always shall be, I release this word into law, and together we say, and so it is.